delay. We're going to go ahead and get started, inshallah. My name is Iman. I will be the moderator for this session. In-laws, a source of challenge or blessing. So this session is a collaboration between the FYI and the Mass Convention. So the FYI is the Family and Youth Institute. We are a mental health organization dedicated to research and education and empowering individuals, families, and communities by promoting youth development, healthy marriages, mental health, and well-being. We do have a booth right outside this room in the hallway. You are more than welcome to come see us anytime today before 6:30 p.m. To get more information about who we are, what we do, and what resources we have that you and your families and communities can utilize, inshallah. So we are going to go ahead and get started, inshallah. Our speaker today is Dr. Hamad Sharif. Dr. Hamad Sharif is a community educator at the Family and Youth Institute. He has an MD and an MBA dual degree from St. George's University School of Medicine. He completed his residency in general psychiatry at Nassau University Medical Center and completed both his public psychiatry fellowship and has a certificate in psychodynamic psychotherapy at Columbia University. He currently practices at Creedmoor Psychiatric Center in Queens, New York. And Dr. Sharif is a certified adult mental health first aid instructor and is a member of the HEAL Collective, a New York-based nonprofit dedicated to Muslim mental health. Let's get started, inshallah.
Thank you. You do not need to clap. She already gassed me enough.
Dr. Sharif.
Oh, what's up?
Sorry, one more thing. For questions, inshallah, if you have questions throughout the talk, just raise your hand and ayat in the back. We'll hand you an index card and we'll go over those at the end, inshallah. Sorry for the interruption.
Alrighty, so we're going to get started, inshallah. So before we begin, normally during a session like this, it is rude to have your phone out. He literally says as he's holding a phone in his hand and he's distracted. But for my session, I actually want your phones out. So if everyone can take their cell phones out and pass them to the front, I have a bag. I'm kidding. I'm not that broke. I'm almost that broke, but not that broke. Take your phones out, and what we're going to do is on the screen, I'm going to give you some directions as to how you're going to join this session. So I will never ever shill for something that you have to download onto your phone, because I hate that. If I was sitting in the audience and the presenter told me download this app, I'd be like, I'm done, I'm out of here. I'll leave the convention. There's nothing to download at all. On your phone, open up your internet browser, whatever your internet browser is. It's Chrome, Firefox, what do they have on iPhone? Safari? I have an Android. Wow, you guys just laugh at that. Okay, whatever. Open up your internet browser, go to vvox.app. The URL is right there. Type that in. When you go to vvox.app, you will see a empty box where it's asking for an ID number. That is the ID number that you guys are going to put in. 154-405-351. If you guys are having difficulty here, like seeing it, you can shift it over if it helps. When you put that code in, you should see on your screen MassCon 2020 in-laws. That's what you guys should be seeing, and that's how you know you're golden and good to go. Okay. So I'll give everyone literally just like a minute or two just to hop on. So open up your browser, vvox.app, put in the code in that little box, and hit join, and you're good. I don't know if you guys can see my phone, but it should look something like this. You should see MassCon 2020, 22 in-law session. Everyone there? Give me a hand raise if you're with me. You're in. Okay. Awesome. Fantastic. Anyone still need more time or having difficulty? Still have? Oh my God. Sister, your husband's right there. Come on. You can do this, inshallah. You got this. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a test run. I'm going to ask my first question. Basically, as soon as I hit this next slide, you're going to see a poll open up on your phone. You're going to submit the answer. You literally just click the answer, hit submit. That's all you do on your phone. And then we're going to look at the poll results live up on the screen. That's how we're going to play this. Okay? So here we go. First question. First things first that you guys got to know. When you hit this answer on your phone, this is completely anonymous. I do not know any of your numbers. Your numbers don't even show up. There is nothing attaching your name to this, so it's completely 100% anonymous. Meaning, technically speaking, you could lie, but I don't know why you would. So right now we have about 60 people that have joined us for this session, mashallah. So really good. If you're just walking in and you have no idea what's going on, if you look on the upper right-hand part of the screen right there, there's the website and there's the ID to join. All right, almost there. We got 3 more people. 2 more people. I'll give it like another, we got a new person joining. I'll only give it like maybe 5, 4, 3, 2. This last person, whoever this last person is. You got this. I'll hold it out for you. For like another person joining. All right, gotta be a little longer. 16. All right, we're done. We're good. All right, let's close our poll. Let's take a look. Ooh! A lot of single folks in the audience today. Why are you here for an in-law session if you're single? Unless you have problems with your own family and you're feeling, if any poor soul puts a ring on me, they're going to have to deal with,
I'm just trying to prepare for the future.
Got it. You get that shout out.
Making sure we're getting the right training.
That's true, you're right. We have a couple of folks here. Almost 10% of the audience, 1 out of 10 of us are engaged. Mashallah, if you are engaged, that sounds wonderful. It's a wonderful time for you. Half the audience is married. So it's pretty much almost like a half-half tie between being single and being married. But married just barely 4% more, edging out single. And we have 3% who are divorced, and then 1.47, like 2%, who are widowed. So now that we know your marital status, we're going to jump right in. And the next question I have, this is only for the guys. If you are a lady, do not answer this question. You will skew these results. So if you're a lady, don't answer. For the guys in the audience, if you are currently in talks with someone, if you're currently in talks with a girl, or you are in a current relationship right now, or have had a previous relationship, how would you describe your relationship with the girl's family? That's basically what I'm asking you. How would you describe your relationship with the girl's family? If you're a lady, do not answer. And especially don't answer out of spite. All right, so we should be looking for like, I don't know, how many dudes are in the audience? I don't even know like how I would get each guy. I guess I don't know, maybe it looks like there's a pretty even number here, half half. So maybe I'll wait for like 30 guys. Almost there. If you need to see the poll results come up, just refresh your browser if you need to rejoin. Okay, we're almost there. I'm going to close the poll in like 5 seconds, and then we'll see how the guys feel about their in-laws. All right, here we go. Everyone ready? All right, dudes, show me what you're feeling. Oh, okay, all right. So we have about 17% saying superb, no problems or issues at all. If you selected number 1 as your answer, mashallah, may Allah increase you in your confidence. If you pick number 2, the relationship is solid with the girl's family. Some minor concerns here and there. Hey, that's pretty good. You're actually neck to neck with folks who picked so-so. It's a mixed feeling of positive and negative, but it seems like the majority of the dudes in the audience feel that they either have a solid relationship or a so-so relationship. This is where it gets important though, because we do have about 10% of the guys in the audience who have a very shaky, there's serious concerns with the girl's family that they have. And then of course the last one, sparse. I have little to no contact with the girl's family. It's going to be for a number of reasons. Everyone has their own unique story and approach to this. But this is important for us to at least take a look and see where our guys are at in terms of their relationships. Now, I'm going to flip the script. Here we go. These are for the ladies in the audience. So ladies, if you are currently in talks, in a current relationship, or have had a previous relationship, how would you describe the relationship with the guy's family? How would you describe your relationship with the guy's family? I'm I'm like eyeball, I'm guessing maybe there's like 35, 40 ladies, I guess. Maybe that's what I'll wait for. If you're a dude, I'm gonna kindly ask, please don't troll these answers by submitting your own. All right, we got a 34. I think this is, I'm gonna close the poll in like 5 seconds. I think we got most ladies in the audience. All right, here we go. Let's see how the ladies feel about their in-laws. Okay. It's, I don't know, I feel it's a little bit is the same, but what I'm noticing here is there's a huge jump in number 4, as opposed to the dudes, who I think only had about 10% picking number 4. So 12% of the ladies in the audience feel that their relationship with the guy's family is superb, no problems or issues at all that you know of. Whoever picked number 2, solid with some minor small concerns here and there. It looks like a third. A third of the ladies here feel that they have a solid relationship, mashallah, that's fantastic. 18%, 20% of the folks feel it's so-so. It's mixed, there's some positive, there's some negative. This is important, though, I gotta point this out. Almost as many ladies who picked solid, minor concerns, we have only 3% lower, almost 27%, a quarter of all the ladies in the room feel shaky about their relationship with a guy's family, and that they have serious issues or concerns. And then a higher number for number 5, which is sparse. I have little to no contact with them. Now, the actual national data that we have is, if you take a look on the top right-hand screen, where both the sister and the brother's faces are pointing towards, you'll notice that of the 5 major reasons for conflict in Muslim marriages, you'll see up top one of the highest numbers for women in particular, for wives, is in-laws. Almost 36 to 40% of women have a major source of conflict leading to potential divorce and are citing a guy's family as their number 1 reason. After that, you'll notice it's finances at 30%, varying different interests at 27%, spending time together or a lack of spending time together, and then of course family or friends, the guy's extended family or the guy's friend circle that he's part of. If you look on the dude side, you'll notice that the number has dropped. And for men in particular, for grooms and for husbands, they don't see as big an issue with a girl's family. It's only 23% of guys who actually have a problem or issue with a girl's family. However, what you are going to notice on the guy's side, that you won't really see that often on the girl's side, if you notice, are attitudes towards sex and sexuality, which becomes a major source of contention on the guy's side. Oftentimes, this is because there tends to be major misconceptions towards sexuality and sexualism in a relationship that don't tend to come out until after you've already put a ring on it and the nikah contract is signed, and then a couple realizes that they are sexually incompatible, which is, of course, a source of incredible frustration, because in the marriage process, how can you know? And there are ways of having the conversation, but I don't think anyone really truly has this conversation. Or if they do have this conversation, it's usually probably like a peach emoji or like an eggplant emoji, and it's something where it's so simplistic and reductive, you're not actually having a deeper conversation about vulnerabilities and insecurities about your sexuality. Because who in our ummah actually has this? What are we trying to be, like a healthy ummah? No, we're not. Of course not. So, super important to notice, 56% of Muslims, this is over half of Muslim families, report a major marriage issue affecting their relationship. So the reason why we're all here today, right now, is to talk about the number 1 reason on the girl side, and of course a major reason on the guy side, which is going to be in-laws, the in-law relationship. And what's important here to note about an in-law relationship is that in-laws and the in-law dynamic can support and help a marriage or break a marriage. Oh, we already got a question?
Yeah.
We're going to do Q&A at the end, but right now you want to point out?
It's about that 56%.
Yeah, go for it.
Where?
This was an FYI poll. I forgot the year that we did this. Yeah, I don't remember the year that this. It must have been like, I think, it's 4 or 5 years ago or something. But they put out a national poll through the Family and Youth Institute. Yes, if you can get the data on that. They put out a national poll, and they polled, I believe, masajid and MSAs across the country, and they gathered data from more of a youth background and a young adult background. And this is where the data is being pulled from for this. I'll get you the exact numbers right after for that. I'm not a PhD, I don't specialize in research. I kind of just take doctors' research and just apply it. So forgive me if I don't have the exact data for you, but I'll get you the citation. Oh, of course. No, you definitely have to ask about that. I could pull a number out of my butt and just be like, oh, Muslim marriages are terrible. 90% of men have a complaint about this. That for them, they're upset that their girl doesn't listen to Andrew Tate. I could make up random weird data like that. So thank you for fact checking me. Next question. This is the big one. This is the big one where we're actually going to get into the meat and potatoes of what is actually hurting us. So, which of the following are, if you're currently in a relationship, or were if you had a previous relationship, which of the following are or were you most concerned about regarding in-laws? I'm going to take more time for this one. Refresh your browser to join us back in. If you joined and you don't know what we're doing right now, if you look up top, you'll see vvox.app. Open up your internet browser on your phone, put vvox.app, you'll see it right up top right, and then put in the code that you see there. And then you'll join our poll.
It says select up to 7 choices.
Yes, meaning you don't need to pick one choice. You can pick multiple choices. Oh, sure. Open up the browser, the internet browser on your phone. So open up your internet. In your browser, type in vvox.app. Right up there, you'll see it. And you should see a little empty bar on the screen. Put that number in, put that exact number.
Thank you.
And then enter, and you'll join us.
Yeah.
Yeah?
I feel like there's a typo on the third option.
Where not accepting me or making me feel welcomed / wanted?
Was it meant to say unwelcome? Because that would be a word.
Oh, no, I mean, the not covers the entire sentence. Not accepting me or making me feel. Oh, you're right, though. That actually would have been better at sticking them out there also. Good catch. I'm sorry? There's some hands in yours? Oh, say the number out loud? Yes, of course. So open up your phone's browser, type in VEVOX dot app, vvox.app. When you're there, you'll see the blank box come up. In that blank box, put in this code. I'll read it out slow. 154 405 351. 154 405 351. No problem. Everyone's good? We're set. All right. Wow, we got 70 people joining this. MashaAllah. Take your time with this, guys. I want you to actually take your time with this one. Select multiple answers. Every answer that applies to you, pick that answer. All right, we're almost there. You have a few more folks left. I'm going to give this maybe another 15 seconds. So you last few folks submit your answers. Bingo, perfect. 64 out of 64. Let's do it. Let's close the poll. Let's take a look. Wow, okay, all right. Let's break this down, everybody. Are you looking at the same screen I'm looking at? Are you seeing the same thing I'm seeing?
Yes.
This is a reflection of, we're a microcosm of everything, but I'm willing to bet if we did this in the main session, the data would probably skew the very same. So we're looking at number one, the biggest problem identified in this room right now that we would have with our partner's family is influencing my partner's judgment and their decisions. Over half, almost 60% of us here in the room right now feel that there's an undue influence and exertion of the influence of a family on our partner. Next up, exerting power, control, and dominance over our relationship. Half of everyone in the room feels that this is a serious concern regarding their in-laws. Next up, not accepting me or making me feel welcome or wanted, which tends to be something that could be subtle or something that's very overt, depending on the family and the family dynamic that you're in. Expressing judgment, bias, discrimination towards me. Half the audience feels that there's some form of discrimination. This is not an enemy of Islam or some random person who's like, I hate Muslims, go back to your country. This is Muslims discriminating against Muslims in a Muslim marriage. And this is where a lot of our pain comes from. It's not non-Muslims that I fear that break up Muslim marriages. It's Muslims breaking Muslim marriages. So this is extremely, extremely important to highlight, which is our own internalized racism. Interfering with my parenting choices. This becomes a huge topic. I'm going to touch upon this in the next couple of slides. In-laws, having conflict with my own family. So in-laws and in-laws, both sides, both sets of parents, both sets of families, clashing with each other. And then this puts an incredible pressure on the actual relationship itself. And then, of course, 35% of the audience said, other. There's another problem or concern that's not listed here, which is fine. Just come talk to me afterwards if there's something that isn't going to be addressed. So let's start first with in-law conflicts. So this is what is going to be a very, very strong source of pain for a lot of Muslims that are going through an early relationship. Usually late stage relationships tend to be more internal for conflict. Early relationships tend to be more external. The factors are more external. And in-laws are the biggest external factor affecting a relationship from the outside. So when you look at it from a psychotherapy perspective, if I could put on my psychiatrist white coat for a sec, basically think of it this way, that you have your family, you live in your family for such a long time, you grew up in your family, you've created your own little mini internal culture and dynamic in your family. And now for the first time, you're introducing a brand new person into this fold. This is someone who has never been in your family, has never lived in your home, doesn't know anything about your customs, and they only know what you've told them and the angle through which you've told them that. And so they enter into the family, and there's this feeling of an outsider has joined us. Yes, I know what every single person says as a wedding. Oh my God, I'll love you like a daughter, or mashallah, we have a new son joining the family. Yeah, it's all hunky-dory, rainbows and butterflies at that point. But the truth of the matter is, no, you don't know this person. This is a stranger. The family didn't choose this person unless it was literally in an arranged marriage. The more conservative option of an arranged marriage. This is you choosing someone and bringing that person into the family. The family now has anxiety about an outsider joining in. And this is going to disrupt that family dynamic when it happens. And so there's a deeply established pattern that is being disrupted by a new person joining in. So this family dynamic drastically changes. And for parents, this is a very difficult thing to accept. It's a very difficult thing to see this. So oftentimes parents, out of defense for their child, remember, this is very clear, no one maliciously intends harm unless you come from an abusive family. If your family is dysfunctional and abusive, then yes, there is malicious intent. But most families don't have a malicious intent. It tends to be something that is more it's under the surface. It's not overt, which makes it even deadlier because you even catch it until it's already seeped and broken in the marriage. Then you look back on it and say, how come I didn't catch that all this stuff had a subtext to it? The criticism was veiled under something. So it's important to recognize that the difficulty in family dynamic and the difficulty in a new person joining a family and the family reacting to that is often the source of marital conflict. Marital conflict that is not addressed then becomes divorce. So let's talk about a few concerns regarding in-law conflicts. So some of the most important in-law conflicts that we're going to be talking about today that cause marital problems in Muslim families, first and foremost, it is an in-law pressuring the woman in the relationship to have a child when she's not intending on having a child at that time. It's pressuring someone to have a child. Usually this is it's very cute in some cultures, like in my culture. I'm half Indian, half Pakistani, 100% confused. But in my culture, usually it's a thing where it's very subtle, where a parent will just sit down and be like, oh, gal, what's going on with you? Any plans? What's going on? How's work doing? Work is good? You have time? Okay, inshallah. your father and I were just talking, we were thinking, it'd be really, really nice if we had someone in the family that we could take care of, something we can do, we can be there for you, it'd be really nice, inshallah, we'll help you with this. And you know what they're actually saying. What they're actually saying is, what is wrong with you? How come there's no kid here? You failed as a couple. You failed every expectation that I've had of you. You failed because you didn't go to med school, and now you're failing again because you haven't given me a child. And your child is going to fail because they're not going to go to med school either. So you have quadruple failed me as a child. I will remove you and have another child who will do this better. So next up is going to be an older relative maintaining power and authority and control. This is usually something that is more overt that you catch in a family, which is the sense that I am losing my child. My child is leaving my home. So in our culture, we have something called rukhsati. Rukhsati is where the bride is leaving with the groom. And it's a custom in our culture where everyone needs to cry and everyone's like sobbing. It's such a painful, sad thing. You are letting your daughter go. She's leaving and going to another family. It's essentially a grieving. You're grieving the loss of your daughter leaving the home. The relationship is no longer the way it was before. When my little sister got married, it was actually pretty funny. Me and my brother actually laughed when she was doing her rukhsati, and she shot us this look of like, if I don't murder my husband, I'm going to straight up come back and murder you. I thought it was pretty hilarious. Wasn't so hilarious when I got stabbed. But in the moment, it was pretty funny. But this is super important to recognize, which is the loss of control, the loss of a child's relationship, and gripping even tighter on that relationship. So it comes down to authority, power, control. These are three issues that usually tend to heighten when someone gets married and a new relationship comes in. If you have a mother-in-law in particular who is overbearing, over-involved, and controlling, this is usually a very key aspect that a lot of in-law dynamics deal with. Sometimes it's if you're in a more patriarchal culture, it can be a father-in-law that's very commanding, very domineering. Everything has to be passed through, that head of the family. This is super important. I know a parent loves their child, and you love your child so much and you want what's best for your child. So when you have this random person, this random girl, random guy coming in, and you're thinking to yourself, are you serious? This is what you're bringing? You could do so much better than this. The problem with that is, one, the belief, this is the core problem, the belief that no one is good enough for my child. My child is like Allah's gift to this planet. My child can do no wrong. My child can absolutely, and there's nothing wrong with my child at all. Other people look to my child for help and guidance on everything, because my child is the most beautiful, golden person that I can imagine. And so, no one lives up to the expectation of that. I'm so sorry. I offended your child. I apologize. Allah grant you, and someday, inshallah, a righteous spouse. That won't make you cry with that. Next up. Conflicting ideas over how to raise kids. You've introduced a child now into your dynamic. So you did what your mother-in-law asked. You finally had a kid. Now the kid's there. And now your mother-in-law is thinking to herself, you know what? You don't know what you're doing. You know nothing about parenting. I know everything about parenting because I raised you and you survived. So I know more about this, so I'm going to help raise your kid, and I know better than you about this. Now there's a clash between this over who knows better about parenting, who is a true parent to this child, who's the expert, and who's the novice when it comes to caring for children. Next up after this is money, finances. So this is something that we identified in the beginning, which is, oh my God, really? Can I take extra time if that's okay?
Sure, you have 12 minutes.
Yes, okay, I'm going to do that. Next up is finances, financial control. If you come from a family in which their finances are tight and you need to lend, your parents are lending to you, this is a form of control also. That you cannot provide for yourself, your parents have to step in and provide for you. Therefore, it's almost like a businessman making an investment. If I'm going to invest in your company, I want something in return. And if you can't give me money in return, I want something else. I want power, authority, decision-making, control. This is what you are purchasing when you're taking money from this relationship. Now, not all families are like this, but it's important for a couple to discuss your financial health and what it means to take money from family. Pressure to conform to Islamic values. So if you're marrying into a family that isn't as religious or as practicing, or you're marrying into a family that is more conservative and is more practicing, this is where in-laws then step in. Especially the case when you introduce a child. Because one family will want that child to be more conservative as per their family. The other family may be uncomfortable with that and want a child to be a bit more secular. There's something that's particularly wrong about either, but what's wrong about the entire situation is mismatched expectations. your expectations as parents, and then your grandparents' expectations on both sides of what this child should be that you're failing at making this child be. And then, of course, the last one, this is probably the most malicious one. It's one that Hollywood loves to talk about with like Monster-in-Law, that movie. I don't know if you've watched that. I'm not saying that I have. I'm a dude. Obviously, I watch monster truck rallies and Joe Rogan podcasts. But just in case you watched Monster-in-Law, this is about an actual malicious intent that my child made a wrong decision, married the wrong person, and I am saving my child by sabotaging the relationship. No one ever thinks to themselves, like, you see it every time in like these Indian dramas, like you have that like evil uncle who's like, I'm going to ruin this marriage and like get the family heritage for myself, you know. And I'm thinking to myself, who does this, man? Like, no one wakes up in the morning, like has devil horns in their head and shakes their hands and ruins their marriages today. It's such a shit on anything to do. No one ever does that. We are always the hero of our own story. And for an in-law, the heroic thing that they're doing is saving you from your own destructive relationship. And so they sabotage a marital relationship in the cause of this being good. So, shifting gears from actual conflicts, we're now going to talk about how do you actually prevent something like this from even happening? How do you actually engender a healthy conversation as a couple before you put a ring on it? If you've already put a ring on it, because I think half the audience has already put a ring on it, this might be a little bit too late. I do have a slide for you, but these are for all the folks who hit single in the beginning. This is for you guys. So, first and foremost, as part of your premarital conversations, before you let emotions and hormones fly all over the place between you and your intended, sit down and have a conversation about this, an actual conversation about this. Not like, yo, spill the tea on your family. This is not a conversation. Spilling tea and just talking like crap about a family is not therapeutic, and it's not healing, and it's not healthy. Not at all. If all your impression is of like, oh my God, avoid my sister, she's absolutely psycho, this is not healing, this is not helpful for a conversation. What is healing and helpful is to say, my sister and I have sometimes had fights and arguments. This is what the fights and arguments are for. This is the kind of temperament that she has. When you are with my sister, this is how I'd like for us to talk to her. This is what I'd like us to avoid. Okay? My uncle is like super into like MAGA QAnon stuff. He's like crazy about this stuff. Like, please do not mention anything about pizza parlors and like pedophiles who are pizza delivery people. Like, he'll go absolutely nuts. Avoid these conversations, because if you talk about this, it's a problem. If it's a problem, it's a fight. If it's a fight, the entire family knows. The entire relationship gets pressure put on it. This is a healthy conversation. It's not about spilling tea. It's about sipping tea. It's a very key difference between the two. So, discuss your role in your family. How are you in your family? Well, how does your family treat you? What do you do in your family? And how is your spouse or the intended coming in going to feel when they're with you in your family? An important key point is, whatever relationship you have with your family, by default, this is how your spouse is now going to be in your family. So if you're kind of like a rebel, you're like the rabble-rouser, you're the one who like raises like, you know, all this noise, you kind of fight and like your parents on stuff, you know, you like to be rebellious, whoever you marry, already automatically by association, even if they have nothing to do with your personality, they've already locked themselves in with you. The perception is already there. That because you're like this, they must too also be approving of this or be like this also. So be careful about this. Discuss this with your intended. Who you are and what you do in your family and how your family treats you. Next up, super important, what are your family's values and priorities and expectations? Super critical to discuss this and talk about this. I did not talk about this with my spouse, and it led to problems and issues with our in-law dynamics, which is trying to help someone who's not of my culture. My wife is Palestinian. I'm Indian and Pakistani. Yes, there are a lot of overlaps in our culture, but there are some very crucial key differences in culture between her culture and mine. And this is something that has to be communicated, because she has no idea what she's stepping into, and I have no idea what I'm stepping into. So it's important to make sure to discuss this. And just because you share the same culture doesn't mean anything. Believe me, it doesn't mean anything. You can eat the same food, speak the same language, and have the same background, but that does not mean you have the same family dynamic. Family dynamic is a unique culture to your family alone. So do keep this in mind, that don't just presume that everything's hunky-dory. This is our parents' generational problem, which is the presumption that so long as you marry someone of the same race, everything is like gravy. It's going to be super smooth. And yet we have such an incredibly high divorce rate in our Muslim ummah. And this is why there's such a strong push to have more open-minded interracial relationships, because this is about a cultural diffusion. This is about challenging cultural norms that are deeply ingrained in culture, but antithetical to Islam. So that's why for us, it's more about don't presume just because your child is marrying someone from the same culture, same background, same village, same street, same home, whatever it is that some families have, that everything's going to be great. Not at all. Not at all. It doesn't mean any of it. There's no guarantee of that. Next, this is super important. Make sure to identify communication with in-laws. So for example, we're visiting your mom's house. I'm going to go hang out with her. Can you tell me a little bit about how to talk to your parents? Do you lead the conversation? Do I lead the conversation? What if she talks to me about directly something? Do I answer? Do I tell her about our relationship, what we're doing, what we're up to? How much do I tell your family about what we're doing? How much disclosure do I give about where we're heading to, what we're doing, who we're with? How judgmental are your parents? How much information is proper? How much information is improper? So this is important for you as a couple to discuss when you're with each other's families. Super important to discuss. Oftentimes, the source of conflict with a lot of relationships is you will open your mouth, insert foot, and then for the rest of your entire marriage, this is how you're going to be presumed to be. That this is the way you are as a couple. So keep that in mind. We're in a highly, highly judgmental community. Just call a spade a spade. We are incredibly, incredibly judgmental. We are racist. We are discriminatory. We are sexist. We are misogynist. We are all of this. Just say what we are and prep for it. Okay? Don't be shocked and surprised going like, oh my God, you're telling me your dad doesn't approve of me being a sister, like a lady doctor? I can't believe it. I'm so shocked. I can't believe this surprised me in our marriage, and now our marriage is falling apart because of different expectations about career and career aspirations. And I'm thinking to myself, well, yeah, I mean, obviously you guys should have caught this. In our community, we don't really support this in our home. It's not like a thing that we do. And it's not your problem, it's our own problem. So you point your finger at the actual problem, which is looking yourself in the mirror and saying, what am I doing to contribute towards this? So keep this in mind as a couple. Have the hard conversations about this. Have the hard conversations. It's super important to address that. When my wife and I were talking about that, we literally talked about racism in both our families. She told me about Arab racism and how Arabs feel towards non-Arabs. I told her about Desi racism. I told her you can have two people from Pakistan that are racist towards each other. It makes no sense to me. It's the dumbest thing. But this is how we are. This is how we are as a people. It's ignorant, it's backwards, it's stupid, but this is who we are. So prepare for sexism, prepare for racism, prepare for discrimination. Let this be a topic of conversation for you, and then be better as a couple, that you don't let your child be subjected to this either. And then, of course, the last one, boundaries. I'm going to say this word a couple more times. Boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. I'm going to emphasize this for the next conversation too, which is a child is now introduced into the picture. Let me play this cute video for you. How adorable is this? Isn't that super adorable, mashallah? May Allah increase this random couple. I got this off of some random free video site. So whoever this couple is, whoever randomly just filmed them, wherever you guys are, inshallah, may Allah bless you and your child. Well, it's a beautiful relationship. I mean, it's super weird. I'm like making dua for random video. But point is, a child is introduced now. What happens now? Just like I told you guys before, this is going to be a parenting dynamic. You're going to have two different sets of parents on both sides with two very different opinions on what this child should be and how this child should be raised. Keep this in mind before you even have that child. Leave the womb. Let this be a conversation. Make sure your child's not already there and now you're having the conversation about what do we do now? You're already panicking as parents over how to be parents. The in-laws are only going to add fuel to that fire. So keep that in mind that before you even try for a child, before you make family planning a topic of conversation, talk about in-laws and in-law expectations for that. First and foremost, how much time does our child spend with in-laws? How much time does the child spend with your family? How much time does the child spend with my family? What is the influence of my family on this child? What's the influence of your family on this child? I don't want my child growing up and having masala curry stains all over themselves. I'm thinking to myself, that's super racist. Okay? We don't only have masala curry stains on ourselves, we also have biryani stains too. Come on, please. And I would probably say the same thing for her, which is like, okay, like our child's going to grow up, but if our child spends more time with you, they're going to speak Arabic. If they spend more time with my family, they're going to speak Urdu. So like, what's the priority here that we have for ourselves? Naturally, of course, Arabic. So I'm kidding. That's also self-racist. Is there self-racist? Yeah, self-racist. Yeah. So that's self-racist. So these are expectations you should have about how much time the child spends with each family, how much influence with each family do you want, how much protection do you want for your child from families. Some of you listening to me right now come from families in which your families have been broken due to marital conflict. Some of you come as a result of parents who may be divorced. Some of you come from families that may have been broken, and it's an important thing to emphasize for yourself what kind of influence this is going to have on a child. How kind of boundaries will you set for your child? So again, I'm going to use that word, boundaries. What do I mean by boundaries? There are a couple of types of boundaries. You can look at the screen and take a look. Not all of them apply to this situation, but this is important for you to emphasize. First and foremost, physical boundaries, which is going to be in-laws touching, feeling all over the place with you. Some people don't like that. They want physical boundaries. Physical boundaries mean, please don't touch. Do not touch. Okay? Leave me alone. There are certain intimate touches that I'm only allowing for my husband. Certain touches I don't allow for other folks. For example, great example oftentimes is like sister-in-law and brother-in-laws. How touchy-feely are your sister-in-law and your brother-in-laws with your spouse, with you? How comfortable are you with this? Next up, emotional boundaries. Super critical and important. How dismissive is a family or accepting is a family when you express emotions? When you actually tell your mother-in-law, I actually feel hurt that you said this. You said something that bothered me. Can you imagine actually saying these words out loud to your mother-in-law and not dying right afterwards? Incredible. This is an emotional boundary. Actually putting your foot down and saying, this hurt me, and I didn't like it when you said that. I'm not going to entertain those kind of conversations anymore. Or you said something to my child, and now my child has a twisted understanding of something. I can't have my child hearing these things anymore. Great example of this. If someone in your family drops F-bombs repeatedly, kind of has like a potty mouth, you don't want your child sitting there and having them babysit, because your kid's going to pick up these words. This is a boundary you are creating, which is when you are in earshot of my child, you cannot speak like this. You see the way I just put that? When you are with my child, or when you're with this kid, niece, nephew, doesn't matter who this kid is to you, you cannot say these things. You are creating a verbal boundary. You're creating a verbal boundary. Next up, time boundaries. When you're hanging out with your in-laws, how much time do you spend? Are you there till Fajr time? Schmoozing and chatting and like spilling tea with each other? This is a boundary that you are violating at this point. So it's important to recognize how much time do you spend, how little time do you spend. When do you actually text your husband and say, peace out, let's go. I'm kind of done here, or I'm having anxiety about this situation. Can we please leave? Or can we like signal something? Can you pretend to have explosive diarrhea so we can just run out of here? Like, try to figure something out where you can establish a time boundary. Work boundaries. How much do your in-laws know about your job? Huge, huge problem for both the husband and the wife. You're telling me she works how many hours? She earns how much? She earns more than you? This is a problem. Well, this is a problem. I can't believe this. What is wrong with her? Tell her to go part-time or per diem. We can't do this. She has to be a mom. She can't be working like this. She's not there for her kids. If she's not there for the kids are going to go out and smoke marijuana all the time and have fornication and sin. I can't believe the entire woman is crumbling because your wife has a job. Astaghfirullah, I can't believe this. So, work boundaries. How much are you conveying and saying to your in-laws about your work and about your ability as a husband and your ability as a wife to provide that? Create boundaries. Spiritual boundaries. How much Islam from your in-laws are you allowing in? Some in-laws have very, very tight, rigid views. Some in-laws are a bit more looser. It really depends. But your boundaries are what you want for your child versus what's being influenced on your child. So this is a key thing. Let's talk about financial boundaries he talked about, which is as a couple, always talk about finances and financial boundaries. Having someone saying like, okay, we have a bank account and my mom and dad are joint holders in my bank account. This is probably going to be an issue or problem. You want making sure there's a separation here, a boundary that's being set. And the last one, sexual boundaries. I mean, this one's kind of inappropriate because no one should be having sexual contact with in-laws. But a sexual boundary in this particular case would be, for example, if you're trying for a baby, and in the process of trying for a baby, may Allah forbid, perhaps there is a miscarriage. And now as a couple, it comes down to who are we telling? How are we announcing this? Are we even announcing this? Is this traumatic for us? Do you feel your family will support, or do you feel your family will judge? Do you feel your family will point fingers and say, oh my God, I can't believe it. She's 32 years old. That's why you had the miscarriage. She should have had a baby when she was 26. You messed up because you chose career, you chose time over having a baby. It's your fault. And you're shocked at I'm saying this, but believe me, I can't tell you how many women have had the finger pointed at them by saying the miscarriage is your fault. It's your fault. Sexual boundaries. How much are you revealing as a couple about your sexuality and about your gynecology? Extremely important as a couple to discuss this. So benefits, a lot of benefits to this. You can take a look on the screen. There's a lot I can schmooze about this stuff, but I'm out of time. So it's beneficial for emotional, psychological well-being, helps to distribute time and attention. It's super, super healthy to have boundaries. This is important to note. Muslims get really offended when you talk about boundaries. It's like a super offensive thing. It's like, I don't want to talk about this. Astaghfirullah, I can't believe you don't want to talk about this. How dare you? I'm your parent. You need to obey me at all points. You need to talk about this stuff. I can't believe this. Astaghfirullah. I'm going to talk to your mom about this. I'm going to talk to your aunts and uncles about this. I'm going to talk to the girl's family about this. I'm going to talk to literally every person on the planet about this. I'm going to go into the main session of MassCon and I'm going to talk about how you don't want to talk about this. I will shame you until you finally tell me what I need to know. This is a boundary. This is a boundary. This is you knowing that there's something toxic and poisonous in my family, and I have to protect my family from this poison. Sometimes it's a hard conversation to say, but the poison comes from those that you love most. The poison comes from those that you love most. It's the hardest conversation to have, but a necessary one to save your marriage and to save your children. So, how do you even do this? First thing, find out what you want yourself. What do you even want for your relationship? What do you even want for your child? Did you even discuss this as a couple? Are you even on the same page as a couple about what you want? Let that be the first conversation. Second conversation, what do these boundaries look like? Now let's talk about it as a couple. What's your boundary? What's my boundary? Let's find a healthy middle, and let's see what works, all right? So next up, how to set them, understand why they're important, decide what you want, examine the existing boundaries right now. You already have boundaries with your family. You already do. Everyone here already has boundaries. You're just not aware of what those boundaries are. Examine those boundaries and see where they are. Do they need to be adjusted or changed at any point? Keep your boundaries simple, sweet, simple, to the point. Like I told you before, you're cursing up a storm. I don't want you cursing in front of my child. Literally a simple sentence. I don't want you cursing in front of my child. Period. Done. Finished. If your mom asks, listen, I've been noticing that you've had a number of periods now. This is 5 periods in a row. Your menstrual cycle is all over the place. It's clear that you're not pregnant. What's wrong? Time to create a sexual boundary. This is where you tell a mother, hey, listen, her periods and her period tracker, none of your business, okay? You're not her OB-GYN. You don't need to know this. Don't word it that way, but telling a mother very politely, listen, we'd rather we not talk about this. If this is something that's between her and I, we're not going to discuss it here. Period. Boundary set. Next up, sticking to boundaries and being consistent about it. Don't set a boundary and then you break your own boundary. And then the final point, super, super important. If a boundary is repeatedly violated, you set a boundary and it's still being violated because the parents are not respecting it. Then you have to reach the last point. The last point is how to have a healthy approach to this. So what is a healthy approach when everything's falling apart and being violated? First and foremost, take what your in-laws say with a grain of salt. Take what they say with a grain of salt. They are here to help you, they're here to support you, but there are boundaries to that help and support and extend to it. Secondly, when an in-law takes over your life, time for a change, time to have a conversation. Don't let these things go because the longer you let a violation occur, the more cracks and breaks in your marriage happen. Super important to cut this off in the bud before it gets really bad. You don't need to be forced to do something you don't want to do. You do not need to be forced by an in-law to do something you don't want to do. And I don't just mean this for pregnancy, I don't just mean this for child rearing, I mean this for literally anything, literally anything. Do not be forced by an in-law to do something you don't consent to. Your kids are your kids, period. Your kids are your kids. Not their grandparents' kids, they're your kids. Prioritize that in terms of parenting. Next up, behavior becomes normalized in different family cultures. Be careful of family culture and the influence of family cultures. Talk as a couple about this, about how much of that culture is important, what parts of the culture you don't like. Make sure to have that separation between what you like and what you don't like. Last up, there needs to be open communication. Please, please, please talk to your significant other. Talk to them, talk to them, talk to them. You'd be surprised at what they're harboring inside their heart, but are too scared to say. By feeling they'll offend you or offend your family by saying this stuff. Have the open, honest conversation about scary topics that may shock them or surprise them about what you may feel about it. Next up, super important, if there's a repeated violation of boundaries, the ultimate boundary eventually is what we call light touch or no touch. What we mean by light touch and no touch is, look, this is great, this is fantastic, you guys are amazing in-laws, but we are piecing out to Florida. We're moving, we're doing our own house there, we'll catch you guys on Eid once or twice a year. That's a good enough boundary for us. This is a physical distance you're putting between yourself and your in-laws. And believe me, it sounds like a terrible thing. It sounds like, oh my God, you're abandoning your family. You're leaving your family behind. You're a terrible child for not being there. You saved your marriage. You saved your marriage and you saved your children. Because if had you stayed for that good reason, it would have broken you, broken them, and broken a family. So prioritize yourself. This is not selfish. This is not selfish. This is self-preservation. There's a huge key difference between this. So if physical distance is needed, that's the ultimate boundary. We can't be together, we're piecing out. The super point that I want to emphasize is if you live with your in-laws, you're in the same home living with your in-laws, nothing puts more stress and pressure on a marriage than that. Sometimes the boundary is moving out. Sometimes the marriage is, like to save the marriage, it means moving out. Creating your own home, your own space, and not being connected or tied at the hip to a family. So keep this in mind for creating those boundaries for yourself. Boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. If you want to save that and preserve that, that's what you got to do. So that's my entire presentation. I know I went like overtime. I'm super sorry for that. Just want to say Jazakallah here. Thank you all so much.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Sharif, for that talk. So we are 10 minutes over, but technically there's not another talk in here until 2. So we have some really good questions. I do want to ask a couple. Just want to plug the FYI, our table is outside. We have a lot of resources on marriage and family relations, so please check us out. You can also scan the QR code there to get more information. All of our resources are online. But we've had multiple questions about how do you set boundaries when either your in-laws or your spouse is not supportive of it and directly blocks those boundaries from happening.
Oh my gosh. I hope that spouse is in the room before I ask that question, because they need to hear the answer. So first and foremost, this is going to be an important point of communication between you and your spouse first. First is between you and your spouse. You cannot go to your in-laws and say, we disagree about this. They're not mediators. They're not family therapists, they're not counselors. Even if you open a conversation with them by saying, hey, listen, I need to talk to you about what your son is doing. This is already a boundary violation by skipping past your spouse and going to your spouse's parents and then complaining about your spouse. This is a conversation primarily between you and your spouse first, primarily. If this conversation fails or goes nowhere, the second step is then getting someone who's an outsider to come in. What do I mean by an outsider coming in? This is where we have a professional step in, a marriage counselor, a marriage therapist. Marital therapy is what's needed now because you and your spouse have not a minor disagreement. This is a fundamental disagreement. Boundaries are not like some light thing. Boundaries, like I said before, make or break a marriage. So this is where it's going to be a critical conversation. You have a fundamental disagreement about creating boundaries with your family. You and I need to have a serious conversation. And I'm bringing in a marriage therapist. We need to talk about communication and conflict resolution. The problem here isn't the boundary. The problem here is your conflict in communication. I'm going to make that very clear. The problem isn't the in-laws. The problem isn't the boundaries. The problem is the miscommunication and the lack of problem solving, conflict resolution between the couple. This is where the problem is starting. The boundaries can be there, and their good relationship with the in-laws can be possible, but this couple needs to get their act together and they need to be on the same page in order for that to happen. So my answer to that question, my genuine answer, it's not an easy answer you're going to hear, but it's a genuine answer, which is couples counseling. Couples counseling, getting a third party to come in, hear both sides, and come up with a middle solution for communication and how to resolve these conflicts. That's my recommendation in that case. If that's just the question. I hope inshallah helps answer the question, inshallah. You get yourself into counseling first. You get yourself. I mean, honestly, there are options for that. They're not good ones, but the options tend to be putting your foot down and then threatening that I will separate unless you go into couples counseling with me. It's a very scary thing to say, but sometimes for some spouses, you really got to put your foot down and say, this is literally the foundation of our family that I'm looking to protect. So either you're with me on this, or we're not protecting the foundation of the family. And if you're not protecting the foundation of the family, why are we together then? What are we protecting then? Because if it's your izzat that you're protecting, then you're putting your own personal feelings and thoughts about your family above your family's. There's a missed priority that's being put here, which means either it's going to lead to conflict right now, or it'll break the marriage later. So if it means coming down to it and putting your foot down and telling someone, I will either separate or I'll put divorce on the table, unless you come with me and we go talk to someone, and you got to do what you got to do. You got to do what you got to do. That's what I would say. And if your spouse still says no, then your spouse has made their decision. It hurts. It breaks my heart to say that, but your spouse has made their decision. Then at that point, if you truly, in your heart, love your spouse and you put a ring on it for a good reason, you will do what you can to protect them. You will do what you can to protect them, even if it means protecting against your own family. Even if it means protecting against your own family. It's the hardest thing to do for someone, which is choosing spouse over family. It's a very difficult thing to do. Choosing your child over your family. Extremely difficult. That's why for some people, it's not a position they want to be in. They would rather do nothing. They'd rather stay put and hope and pray it all works out than to actually take a hard conversation forward and confront something that may be extremely uncomfortable or difficult for them to do. But this is why counseling and therapy is so incredibly critical and crucial to have that. It's so important to do that. And then oftentimes it means like, well, why don't you want to do counseling? Why don't you want to do therapy? What is your fear about this? What is your apprehension? Are you scared of something happening? Are you scared of something you might say that you know in your heart is true, you just don't want to hear it right now, or you're not ready to hear it right now? These are conversations you got to have about this, what the apprehension is, why they're apprehensive about it, and if they're apprehensive and don't want to go, then get yourself into counseling and therapy and learn the way to communicate with someone who may be stonewalling you about this. I hope, inshallah, that helps to answer that question, inshallah. It's not an easy answer, but it's where we're at as an ummah. What got next?
Second question. How do we set boundaries prior to marriage when we're still in the talking or engagement phase, especially regarding living with in-laws?
So super important, communicate what you want. Communicate what you want. I know a lot of times when you're in pre-marriage, like when you're in that lovey-dovey phase, and you're just like, look, I just really want this to work out. So this is important. I will say what I think is right. I will say what I think is right for the relationship. Not what's right for you. You're saying what's right for the relationship. Because you're deeply emotionally invested in this person. You want this relationship to work. You put so much time and effort into this. Your heart really does feel attached to them. You want to make them happy. Key word, you want to make them happy. So you take your own happiness and you put it beneath theirs. And so you prioritize their happiness. Will it make you happy if you move in with your family? Will it genuinely give you happiness? Khalas, okay, I'll do it then. And then by doing this, you have now seeded a boundary, lowered a boundary. And this is a good choice if you feel you want that boundary lowered. If you never asked for that boundary to be lowered to begin with, that boundary will be violated then. And it will then form cracks in your relationship and marriage. But you're doing it for them. But the problem with doing things for their happiness is you sacrifice your own. If you sacrifice your own, you are no longer happy in your relationship. You are no longer happy in your relationship. This relationship becomes lopsided now. It's not going to function like this anymore. So you need to be open and honest with what makes you happy and what your own boundaries are. Sometimes it's being very clear. Sometimes it's telling someone, if you want this to go forward, if you want me to sign that nakah contract, and you want this to be a relationship, this is my non-negotiable. My non-negotiable is no living with in-laws. Period. No living with in-laws. That's what I'm putting down. If your family's offended by that, I apologize if they're offended by that, but this is my preference. This is what I want. Be clear. Be open. Be clear. Don't wait until you're already walking out of the wedding hall. Then turn to your spouse and say, we're driving to whose house? Oh no, this is not going to work. Way too late now. You didn't establish these boundaries in the beginning. So make sure to have these conversations. Clearly express your wants and needs. It's not selfish. It's not selfish. You are protecting and preserving your happiness. You are one half of this marriage working. You've got to be happy in this marriage for it to work. So profess your happiness and what makes you happy. And if your spouse truly loves you, they truly love you, you two will come to a compromise on what works best. And if you cannot come to a compromise, that's where a professional steps in. Premarital counseling and couples counseling. Those are the two options that I would recommend at that point if you're having fundamental disagreements on that, inshallah.
All right, so we are almost 20 minutes over, so this is the last question, inshallah.
Okay.
As a husband, how do I deal with my parents when they disagree or they dislike my wife and are abusing her?
First and foremost, okay. I guess there are two ways to answer that question. First and foremost is going to be the word abuse, which is when I hear the word abuse, I think to myself, this is something that is absolutely like DEFCON level 1. This is extremely serious. If there's abuse occurring in this relationship, this is something where you absolutely must protect and preserve the honor and the sanctity of your spouse and of your family. Because if there's an open door to abuse your spouse, then that door also means that they're abusing you by proxy, and if children are in the picture, it opens the door for children to be abused too. It opens the door for the entire marriage to crumble and fall apart, and for everyone to walk out broken and traumatized. It's an extremely scary situation to be in which abuse is occurring. If you are seeing the red flags of abuse, get out immediately. These are where boundaries have to come up, and boundaries have to come up strong. Very strong boundaries have to come up. Sometimes the boundaries may be very scary for parents to hear. We're not going to come see you anymore. We're not coming and visiting anymore. My wife isn't coming anymore. Sometimes just saying those words is the scariest thing to say to your family, but that's what you got to say. And they'll ask you why, and this is another boundary. How much are you going to reveal to them about that? It's because you do this. This is the way you treat her. And if your parents have narcissistic tendencies, or your parents tend to be gaslighting, they'll probably say, well, she does this, she does that, she was like this, she disrespected like that, she treats you like this, she doesn't do enough for the kids, this is why she's like this. And you're thinking to yourself, you can accept what they say, or you can change the narrative. And the way you change the narrative is by countering that, by saying, no, the problem isn't her, the problem is the way you're treating her. And if you continue to treat her this way, then I won't be here. I won't be here for it. You will lose your relationship with me if you mistreat her. And it's super. If your parents love you as a child, for them, now they're the ones who have to re-examine what they're doing and how they're doing it. This is a boundary. What I just said right now, the way I worded it, this is establishing a boundary. If you want your son in your life and a relationship to be healthy, you have to stop treating her like this. If you continue to treat her like this, I'm peacing out. I'm peacing out. You'll hear from me on Eid, I'll text you, I'll call you, but I'm not stepping foot in here until respect is given. And you're thinking to yourself, the way any parent would react to this, which is you are breaking a family relationship, you're breaking a bond of blood between us. Allah will punish you for doing this because you have to talk to your parents for doing this. And this is where the abuse is no longer emotional, the abuse is spiritual. Because now the Quran and the Sunnah are being weaponized against you to guilt you into staying in something that is harming you and harming your spouse. This is not Islamic. Period. This is not Islamic. You do not quote the Quran and Sunnah to rope a spouse in or rope an in-law in and trap them in a state of abuse. Do not do this. You won't just break them emotionally, physically, or socially. You will break them spiritually if you do this. And that is not on them that they violate that. That's on you as a parent breaking someone's spirit. So be very careful if you're being manipulated like this. This is a form of manipulation. This is a form of abuse. When a parent tells you, I mean, in my culture, it's all the time we get this. It's like, oh, if you don't have a child, what if I die of a heart attack and I never get to meet my grandson? And you're thinking to yourself, seriously? Like, go exercise. Take care of your heart then. Take blood pressure medication. Like my dad, take care of yourself. Like, stop shoving like chicken tikka masala inside your arteries and you'll live to see your grandson. Don't guilt me into making a decision because it's what's best for you. Don't do that. And same vice versa, exact same thing. If someone says this to your spouse and says to your spouse, I disagree with the way she is. Do you see the way she wears her hijab or doesn't wear her hijab? Do you see the way she acts? Do you see the short sleeves that she's wearing? Oh my God, I can't believe stuff like that. Do you see what she posted on Instagram? I can't believe this. Your wife is someone who, I can't believe I'm saying this, but your wife is acting like a whore. She's acting like a slut, a stuff. I can't believe this. What made you marry her to begin with? How do we even allow for this to happen? I can't believe this. I don't want her near our family. Next time Eid comes, tell her not to come. I don't want to see her. Tell her I said this. And it's the most important thing a parent says. Tell her I said this. Now you are being positioned against your spouse and now have to fight your spouse on behalf of your parents. This is emotional manipulation. This is abusive. Either it breaks you or it breaks the relationship or it breaks the connection with your parents. One of these three are going to break. Whichever one breaks first, that depends on the dynamic, but you have to call it when you see it. You've got to call it when you see it. Your spouse needs to know where your priorities are at. If your priorities are with your family, make it clear to your spouse. Make it clear to your spouse, my priorities are with the family. My parents are like this. I agree with my parents on this. I have the same views that they have. So I'm sorry, but we have to compromise on this. If that's the way you are, have the conversation. If it's the opposite, or you say, no, my parents are actually wrong. I disagree with them on this. I agree with you on this. However, there are a couple of things you and I do need to change. There's some boundaries we need to create between them and also boundaries between us. Let's have that conversation also. Let your spouse know where you stand on this. But when abuse is occurring, this is an absolute, gigantic, colossal red flag. Huge red flag. Protect your spouse, protect your family. Get out of abuse. Get out of abuse. If you cannot get out of abuse, this is where you need to get a professional to step in. A professional must step in to help you with this, because otherwise that trauma will destroy your spouse and destroy your family, if this is the case. So be wary of that. Whoever asks this question, it's an extremely heavy question to ask, but a very important question to recognize. And if you are a family member and you are seeing abuse in your family, if you're seeing abuse in your family, talk to the victim, if you know they're a victim, and if you have the power and authority to do so, talk to the perpetrator. And tell them that you've got to call it out. You've got to call it out when you see it. You can't do this anymore. You can't. And if the victim doesn't have a voice in your family, get them out. Get them to a safe space. Safe space can mean anything. Get out of the house, stop visiting, stop talking, blocking, whatever it takes. You get them a sense of safety and security so they can start the healing process in this. So if you have a specific situation regarding abuse, please make sure to talk to me in private afterwards. If you need more personalized feedback on that, inshallah. But thank you. Whoever asked that question, Jazakallah khair for that. That's an extremely important thing to touch upon for this. Thank you.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Sharif. So we are now 25 minutes over.
I'm sorry guys for keeping you guys. My apologies.
So if you guys enjoyed this session, we are always looking for feedback. We are doing video and written testimonies, and if you are interested in doing that, we are giving you guys incentives. Please come to our table to talk to us about that. And also please check out all of our resources. We have them printed on the table outside. You can also access our QR code and all of our resources here, inshallah. And please remember, all of the knowledge shared here today is an amana. So please push it forward to your families, to your spouses, and may Allah allow us to implement it in the best way, inshallah. Ameen.
Thank you.
We have a lot more FYI sessions today, so please make sure to look out for them and attend. Jazakallah khair for attending. Assalamu alaikum.